Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella Herrera. Hi, Maricella. How is it going week 4 of shelter in place in New York City?
Wait, this is week 4?
I think so. I've lost all track of time.
I really thought it was like week 6. Well, clearly that's how it's going.
Clearly. Going
I
great.
don't know. I no longer know what day I live in or what week I live in or anything else. I also got a massive delivery of food today, which was nice because I ran out of everything.
Delivery?
There was not, but I have been, my local wine stores have been restocking me pretty much weekly, which is nice.
Well, lovely. Support small businesses, incredibly important during this time. So how do you I find it curious, although very relatable, that you're like, is this week 6 or, time is losing relevance because, it's difficult, particularly working from home, to kind of separate time. Like, how do you, know when your day starts for work or know when it ends? How do you fit in other things? Are you working on the weekends? I mean, you're the type of person who's working all the time anyway, but I'm just wondering how you've been able to set boundaries.
Not very well is the answer to that. I'm trying, I'm not a morning person, so mornings are fine. I start working pretty much as soon as I wake up. Although I have done a couple of workouts in the morning this week, and that was a nice way to start the day. Mostly I've been trying to do in the evenings, have something that kind of sets at this time I need to stop doing what I'm doing and put my attention somewhere else. And that a lot has been either workout classes, even if it's via Zoom, but that have a live scheduled time, or just making sure I have, a chat, like a virtual drinks or something scheduled. Because if not, I can very easily just keep going. And then it's very late at night and I haven't realized that I haven't moved from my couch doing the same thing that I was doing all day. I think that's really it. I've not been very good.
I think we're all learning, and everyone's experience is incredibly different. Our guest today, Rachel Sklar, who's the founder of The List and is also very, very active in Twitter and thought leadership around a variety of topics from politics to parenting, is a single mom and has her own experiences during this time and what it's like to navigate work and homeschooling and childcare, especially in New York City. So all of these different perspectives of what we're experiencing, but then also how we're learning to navigate this new normal is a great thing to share. And I think we're all learning from each other. I love exactly what you were just talking about, is having something scheduled at night. I haven't been good at that, and it's definitely something I'm going to take your advice on.
Yeah, I don't know how you all are doing it, to be honest. For me, it's just me, and it's just me in my apartment, and I don't have to deal with the, extra family and kids and homeschooling, and I'm having a hard time for other reasons. Like I'm having the I'm on my own and alone hard time, but I have no idea how you or how Rachel, or you with the 3 kids, Rachel as a single mom, how you are handling the whole situation while also trying to be a teacher and an entertainment provider for your kids and cook dinner and do everything at the same time.
It's, it was really hard at first, and it is still very hard. I am more of a type A person, and so I want to do everything.
You?
Really? I want to do everything, and I want to do it really well. And, so I was helping the kids with the school, and my husband's like, just, whatever, just don't, if you don't turn it in, you don't turn it in. And I'm like, how could you not turn something in? I need to check every box. I need to get it in on time. And so it was just putting so much pressure on myself when you think about, I'm probably in at least 4 hours of just meetings a day, plus then, all the work and other stuff I have to do, and email and news and all that, types stuff that takes up time, plus schooling kids, plus house and cooking. And I'm not saying that's all on me. I mean, of course, my partner is a help. My older son's been helping out a lot, but it just really gives you a different concept of time and how to bucket time and how to prioritize time, and also how to eliminate things that aren't a good use of your time. Become so much more aware of how my time is spent and how it could be better spent. And, if anything, the best thing I've learned about time over the past couple of weeks is how great it is to just spend time with my family and the kids. And even if we're fighting over schoolwork, we're doing it together. And it's an honor I didn't really have before because someone else was playing that role. So I'm trying to look at the silver lining to all of this and, give myself some slack, try and live in the moment, and, just make new and different experiences and memories.
I like that. That's a good takeaway.
Well, when we talk on the podcast next week, I'm probably going to say, this is driving me nuts. But today I'm very zen. It's also spring break here, so maybe that's why. But I'm just trying to take it one day at a time.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of my conversation with you on Monday where I'm like, I have decided this week is going to be a good week. And you were like, good, because I am not doing okay.
Yeah. Well, it is shaping up to be a good
Balancing
week.
It out.
Yes.
It's been a good week.
All right. Let's get to my conversation with Rachel Sklar. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast. It's quite an honor to have you here.
It's a delight to be here. Thank you.
I always talk about how I met people because I think it's important to call out all the ways that we build our network and relationships. And so you and I happen to be on a panel together or some sort of workshop talking about boards, getting on boards for a women's conference in New York City. And I had known of you for a long time, and I was so excited to connect with you then. And
you were awesome.
Stay connected. Well, thank you.
You were awesome
you.
On that panel /workshop / just generally in that room.
Yeah, round table. I'm not sure what it was.
It was,
but
yeah, no, but you were very authoritative and servicey.
Servicey. What does that mean?
Well, it just means you were of service. That's kind of a magazine term, I guess. In journalism term, like service journalism, like how to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know, just something with you provided useful takeaways, actionable intel. Not a lot of people do that.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. So, Rachel, if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit, your career, your life is just so robust and unique, and I think clearly your passion and your intellect and just your servicey nature comes out in many different ways through all the things you do. But you started as a lawyer from Canada.
That's right.
And are now taking over the world. Can you share just a little bit about how you went from a lawyer to activist, journalist, creating community building, and everything in between?
Well, I've always been the everything else. People never quite know how to describe me, and probably because I do not know how to describe myself. Yes, activist, journalist, community builder, all of those things. I would say first and foremost, writer, creator, and instigator. So I have always been those things. When I went to law school and I did all those things there. So I went to law school, which I loved because I could also do the yearbook and be in a play and make a video for my class and run the yearbook. And I don't know, what else did I do? I was on the student council and, I ran the law follies. And it was just, it was a delightful time with delightful people. People really don't talk about law school that way. I had the most wonderful experience. And I also loved the education. And then the practice of law was different. I did not go to my law firm and do all of, those things, although I did make a summer video, which people definitely did not know what to make of. But I sort of always knew I wanted to be a writer. I always knew I wanted to, I guess, be a journalist in the sense that I had been on the school paper. I knew I wanted to do all the writings. And my law firm, a firm called White & Case, a white shoe law firm, randomly invited me to go to their Stockholm office. And I had never done a semester abroad, never done anything like that. And it was so random. I had no reason to go to Sweden. And it was in the winter. I still don't know why they picked me. It's a global law firm. I had never I hadn't shown any interest. I firmly believe they were like, who can we send to Sweden in winter? Let's send the happy Canadian. So I went to Stockholm for 6 months in winter, from November through May, and it was just a blast. I mean, again, it was a blast for all of the reasons, not necessarily the legal reasons. Yeah. But the one thing that I did start doing while I was there is sort of fumbling my way to freelancing. And I used Media Bistro a lot. And that's how I got my first clip. I had signed up to Media Bistro, and I'd sort of followed one of their how to pitch guides and sent something into Metropolitan Diary for the New York Times. So my first published clip was in the New York Times.
Sure. And I mean, as you do.
I did not paid, but I started freelancing. So I freelanced from Sweden. When I came back, I started doing Media Bistro stuff and sending the stuff in, and just sort of fumbled towards getting bylines.
It's your side hustle. You're like lawyer by day and writer by night.
It was a very significant side hustle, though, because in my very first journalism class that I took at Media Bistro, I met a lovely young woman by the name of Glynis McNichol.
Oh, Glynis.
I said that like I'm vaguely Irish. So anyhow, Glynis is my co-founder now at The List, and we met in January 2002 in boot camp for journalists, and we stayed in touch, stayed friends, and went from there to eventually running a company together. So that is I skipped a decade in there, but
yeah, it's like you skipped a lot of really amazing things, which I'm going to pull out of you, so don't worry.
I mean, what did I do in that decade? I quit law. I spent all the money I didn't realize was going to disappear and not just magically replenish itself. I took a lot of trips. Like I went to Australia with my roommate because he was competing in the gay games. So I went and I sort of tried to write there. Some other law school friends of mine were played in the World Cup of Lawyers. That is a thing. And I went to join them in Malta at the World Cup of Lawyers in Malta. And it was fantastic. The ratio of soccer playing lawyers in an all-men's tournament, to me, it was not the worst, I will say. So I don't know. I guess I have some stories.
I'm going to get them out of you. So I want to talk about The List, but first I kind of want to pull out some things that happened in that decade and things that I just, always really inspire me about you and about, I think you embody a lot of the things that make me like that I aspire to be, but I'm always so anxious about. So one is your voice. Like you have a really powerful voice and you use it. And voice, I'm talking about thought leadership and opinion. And so you have spent a lot of time on TV. You've spent a lot of time trending on Twitter, really using your voice to have an opinion and to have an opinion that's really trying to affect the conversation. And, I don't know, I think many of us, if I'm being overly vulnerable, like want our voice to matter, but don't always have the confidence to think that it matters or to think that you're adding something to the conversation. So you just amaze me all the time with what you're able to do. And how did that come about?
I would never have thought to frame it like that. Thank you. I always liked writing. I always felt strongly about things that were fair or not fair, particularly in law school. I was just I connected very solidly to notions of fairness and justice. which I think is one of the reasons that I was able to perform well in law school, because I sort of I connected strongly with all the fact patterns of the different cases. That's my theory. That, or using multicolored highlighters on my summaries. I stand by that. But I don't know. I just, I say things. I share things. And I often think that a lot of it comes down to you don't know what you don't know. And it's kind of easier to cut through. The more you know, the more you are burdened by nuance. And sometimes that is obviously necessary, and sometimes it can sort of be the forest for the trees. So I just sort of started writing. I was plopped into writing about media. Elizabeth Spires, who's a fantastic writer, had recruited me to write Fishbowl New York, the media blog, at Media Bistro, and I just basically plopped in, and it was supposed to be voicey, and you're supposed to have a take, so I just had a take. And sometimes I look back at my early stuff and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I said that, because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And then after about a year of that, I met Arianna Huffington at a party, and I had planned, I asked my Greek friend something to say to her because I wanted to make an impression, and I did. And then I struck up a relationship with her, and she eventually recruited me to go to the Huffington Post, which was a big game changer for me. That's where I started going on television. And I just had thoughts, had opinions, was clearly very sort of left-leaning, and there's a lot of injustice going on. So that's where it comes from. And then, I don't know, one thing led to another. They started putting me on Twitter. Once again, TV. Once again, I didn't know what I didn't know. So there I was, arguing with Pat Buchanan on MSNBC, like I belonged there.
You did belong there.
I mean, I did all right. They kept on inviting me back. And then, then there was Twitter, and then social media. I was just right place, right time for someone who really, really thrived on a real-time conversation, who was good at first draft writing, and who, could find her way to a punchline in the kicker, which I think helped a lot it was just a really good fit. Sort of the online knee-jerk, real-time, hot take world was a good fit for me at the time. Now I'm a teeny bit more tired. I don't know. The hot takes are a little bit more lukewarm, but then again, Twitter, it really makes you feel like you're writing, but you're not being paid.
Yes. Yeah. Can we talk quickly about that concept of amplification? Sure. And because I think there's a lot of power, particularly in those that have a platform or have a following, in how we elevate conversations and voices that...
Elevate.
See
what you did there.
Conversations and voices that aren't getting the attention they deserve. And you're very intentional about that. And, how do, our listeners be more intentional about that as well, specifically as we think about networks, right? If it's your in-person network or your social media network, they tend to be more homogeneous, unless you really go beyond that, which I think is important, that we take stock of who's in our network and how we diversify that, and then ensure that we're sharing different thoughts and ideas. So what does your intent look like there? How do you do that?
Well, it started by being very aware that it was men who were getting most of the play, right? I started to change the ratio in 2010 because all these lists, these up-and-comer lists, the Forbes 30 under 30, the next best thing, or we took a panel of experts and we got their predictions for the new year, whatever it was always almost exclusively men, almost exclusively white men. And that was how the sausage was made. You just really saw it. When I say you, I mean I started to really see it, and I came to this sort of awareness when I started paying attention to how the media sausage was made. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't help but notice the ratio and then you see it everywhere, right? Who's getting nominated for Academy Awards, who's voting for who gets those nominations, who decides who gets nominated for Grammys, who's in the Senate, who's running the government, who are the people who are constantly being profiled by the New York Times in diners in the Midwest. I mean, you see whose voices are deemed to count. and you see who is making the decision about those voices. So anyhow, this was a arc for me, a journey, but I just started realizing that people, like men referred men on Twitter, men retweeted men, like there started to become studies, and I just started to be very conscious about it. And so when we started Change the Ratio in 2010, which was a like sort of loose confederation of women that turned into a listserv that morphed into what is now the List, which is a collective of dynamic professional women who are committed to their own careers, but also to working together to help each other rise. That, part of that is amplification, and the sort of the three tenets of Change the Ratio, which I sort of coined that term in 2010, deliberately to not be gendered, by the way, because there are lots of ratios that need changing, but it's visibility, access, and opportunity, where visibility begets access, which begets opportunity. I also started seeing myself becoming invited to more and more panels, which led me to more and more VIP dinners and speakers dinners, or into, more rarefied rooms. And you just realize, wow, I had no idea this was going on. Mm-hmm. And you just realize, like, wow, there are lots of really sort of high-level elite clubs, and a lot gets done there. Mm-hmm. And as you level up, guess who's there? The money, the power, the influence tends to skew male, white, mm-hmm. sort of, again, like straight, cis, sort of affluent, all of the different sort of areas where you see power, influence, and money concentrated. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, to take it back to Twitter, just the bottom line is like this. I try to be, a battering ram. Like, I recognize that sometimes you're a battering ram, sometimes you're a scalpel, and just I am most effective at being a battering ram. Like, great, I'll just try and be loud, because I know I can be loud right now. I can't go back 20 years and retake some computer science courses and learn how to code, and that there's ways to correct things, and mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just like, great, what can I do right now?
I love that. So let's talk about Ruby.
Yay. My daughter, sorry.
Yeah. Yay. Well, and
let's talk about Jules.
Well, speaking of who's in those rooms, diamonds, Jules. So you've spoken out a lot about not just being a parent, but being a single parent, which is an identity that and a reality that does not get enough attention, right? And I think, we know that in the United States we're so far behind the game. I mean, it's not funny. It's not even funny around, access to childcare, paid leave, or other what I consider essential benefits. But that conversation, I think, still tends to skew around, two-parent households or heterosexual households. And like, it's important that we change that conversation to understand really the complexity and the reality of what it's like to be a parent in the United States. And so you've done some great writing on that, talking about your writing. And what is that experience like for you to write? I mean, I guess everything you write is so much from the heart and so much from your personal experiences, but what have you heard about the impact you're having on this conversation?
Well, I just think that we have defaults that are accepted, right? And so I was just talking about the defaults of like who gets listened to, like if there's authority that society has invested with men, white men, sort of like a certain class, a certain level of education, all of these things. These are defaults, and if you don't check them, then you assume them, and I do it too. I certainly used to do it, and so there's this default assumption of a nuclear family, of a heterosexual coupling that created a child, of a two-parent household at home, of somebody there to provide childcare when X, Y, and Z is happening. And the system reflects that. Like, for example, The tax system reflects that, where there's childcare is not a business expense per se, beyond the minimum of what anybody can write off. I remember how angry I was when our accountant told us that we couldn't reimburse me for childcare for a list event, for a list party that I hosted. It's like, it's my party, it's my company, I'm hosting this. Childcare is pretty essential in that scenario, but nope, that's my burden, right? And because the tax code was written contemplating a situation where anybody who might need childcare probably had it at home because they married it. So there those kinds of difference. Even there's little things where I guess this past year, really I realize a bunch of different ways that the benefits of a 2-parent household. I'm not talking about obviously a double income. I'm not talking about just having somebody else there, even to help with decisions. I really feel like decision fatigue that killed me when Ruby was a baby. I was like, oh my God, what color socks? I don't know. Just too many decisions I had to make. But there's an art project every month. And so every month there's an art assignment. And in October it was a robot. And I remember being like, oh my God, we're going to build our robots. And we did. We made our cute little robots. It was great. We came to school and there were these ginormous robots. And I was like, 10-1, the husbands were really excited about this art project. And it pulled people one by one. It was the most husband invested project. And it was just really a funny moment of realizing okay. But also in the pre-kindergarten sort of rites of passage in New York require a lot of they can require a lot of back and forth with your child. A lot of people opt for prep. I'm just gonna it's a bit of an industrial complex, and I once again was like, when Ruby is with me and I am occupied with something, there's not another person there with her to play a board game, practice, help her practice her writing or something. It was just a realization. I was like, this is a thing I don't have. And I have a lot. I have an amazing community. I have amazing support system, family, whatever. But it's me and Ruby. We live together. Her father lives in another city. So isn't a day-to-day support, though they have frequent FaceTimes, and that's great. It's a little break for me. But so I think when I talk about being a single mom, being a single parent, I try to sort of invert those defaults and remind people of how, there's lots of ways in which single parents are just parents. I think there's this stigma that you're a single mom. Either you're unlovable, someone didn't want to be with you, or you don't have money, or it's so hard. And yes, by the way, it is hard, but all parenting is hard. And I couldn't be happier about how my life is with Ruby. So it's that stuff. Part of it is wanting to reclaim the term single mom as something that is delightful and wonderful, and it's not like the consolation prize to I didn't find Prince Charming. It's
well, I think okay. You nailed it when you said it's a stigma, a socially constructed stigma around what, quote unquote, success should look like, or whatever term it's, a lot of my friends, their work is in the home, and feel a stigma around saying that, and someone's like, what do you do? What's your job? And they have one. They have a full-time job. It's a really important one and really hard one. Or, you mentioned being a single parent. And that's something that from the, how media represents it, to how laws and legislation's passed, as you mentioned, to just one-on-one connections, that you see these situations in which we have such bias. We have such a perception of what, or expectation of what, again, success isn't the right word, but whatever it is should look like.
And it's also very sort of race and class coded.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a white single mom. It's such a different stereotype. Honestly, read I'm not going to say read a David Brooks column to invite you to spend that time reading a David Brooks column, but whenever I have the misfortune to read a David Brooks column, inevitably there's like some little throwaway to, children born out of wedlock. Like you can always tell, like out of wedlock is a tell that they don't think it's a good thing. Out of wedlock, how dare you? Yeah, I mean, it's all you can do is push back and break the barrier. So if I may, a little plug, because you asked me if I had started I have a germ of a thing that is starting. It's called The Luckiest, and it is a planned newsletter, possibly podcast, around just my experience being a single mom, because it grew out of me saying to Ruby all the time, aren't we the luckiest? We're so lucky. We're the luckiest. And I feel that way. And it's a wonderful, lucky thing to have a child. And I think that's a fairly decent place to begin from when you consider any parent, while still acknowledging all the things that are challenging. I don't know. I mean, that's what most parents, when you catch them looking at their kid while their kid is sleeping, while they're sleeping, you're like, oh, you're so beautiful. I love you so much. I'm so lucky. And then they look really peaceful and you have a moment of calm. And that's okay.
All right, Rachel, we have a few questions, a speed round, so I want you to answer in one sentence or less. Introvert or extrovert?
I don't know anybody who would say I wasn't an extrovert, but I am an extrovert who likes her alone time.
Favorite day of the week?
All the days that we get to be alive. It's a I'm one of those Pollyanna people. Every day is a blessing.
Day.
Oh my God, I just said the word blessing unironically, but it's true. I stand by it.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl, always. And so is my daughter.
Oh, that makes for some fun morning wake-ups.
Yeah, no, we are both night owls. What can you do?
Dream dinner guest?
So this, I actually did think about this. As a musical theater person, I'm in the BMI musical theater workshop. I was so excited when I discovered that Carol Hall, who wrote Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, had been a BMI graduate, and she's not one of those musical theater writers that you hear of. And she passed away about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I was so disappointed because I had just kind of thought that eventually I'd meet her.
Yeah.
I love that musical. It's brilliant. She wrote the music and the lyrics. And we, listen, I love Stephen Sondheim, but we all know a lot about Stephen Sondheim. We don't know enough about Carol Hall. I would have loved to have just sat down with her. And yeah, if I had dinner with her, I would just be going through every song and just be like, okay, what were you thinking for this one, for that one? She was amazing. Anyhow, appreciate your female creators while you have them.
Oh, so true. So true. What is your biggest pet peeve?
I'm mostly myself not like doing things I need to do and then afterwards realizing that I should have done them. How about I'll just leave it at that? That's myself. Or slow talkers / slow walkers.
Definitely a New York City pet peeve. Definitely. You can always tell who's a tourist. They walk really slow.
I mean, it's a beautiful city. I should look up more too.
Yeah. All right. What's one question or thought you want to leave with our listeners?
I will reiterate what I said before about something that Glynis raises often, which is whose voice are we hearing? Who is being represented in this conversation? And who are we missing? Who are we not hearing from? Who are we not considering? Who's not being focused on? These are always important questions to ask. And it's always important to take a moment and consider that. It's like media criticism 101. It was kind of the first thing I realized about media. What? That isn't the whole story? You mean David Brooks isn't the authority on everything? Well, I can't believe that.
I'm shocked.
Yes. It's important. It's important to remember and then to call it out. And then to call it out, to use that voice.
Use it. I love it. All right, Rachel, thanks so much. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Ellevate NTWK. That's Ellevate Network. and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Katherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.